Hello and welcome back to Vazura Recaps. I'm going to describe the film. Calvin Cambridge, a teen, lives at Chesterfield Orphanage with two of his best pals, Murph and Reg. They all like playing basketball in the orphanage's front yard. A group of bullies led by Ox stops them in the middle of the game one morning. He dares Calvin to a basketball jersey fight. While Calvin's pals advise him to ignore the bully, the ambitious young man wants to face the challenge like his favorite basketball players. The match begins, and Ox easily defeats him due to the large height difference. He gets Calvin's jersey and rips it apart simply to upset him, as promised. Stan Biddleman, the orphanage director, frequently makes the children sell candies to collect funds for their own good. That night, they travel to the Los Angeles Knights home game and sell candy outside the arena. Calvin notices the Knights coach, Wagger, getting into a car to leave at the end of the game. He approaches the man and offers him some candy. When the coach realizes they're doing it for charity, he hands Calvin a $20 cash. Calvin, on the other hand, refuses to accept it since he is unsure whether the money collected is truly donated to charity. Wagger, impressed by the kid's candor, provides him 4 tickets to the next basketball game. Calvin hurries to Murph, elated, to inform him about the tickets. The next day, a group of couples arrives at the orphanage in search of a kid to adopt. Calvin is initially optimistic, but soon finds that the parents only want younger children. They are later given a carton of donated clothes from a thrift store. Calvin obtains a pair of shoes and puts them on. When he inquires about the shoes, the nun informs him that they belong to a great basketball star. Calvin checks them and discovers Michael B. Jordan's initials. Ox is envious of the shoes and steals them. He ties the laces and tosses them into the air. To Calvin's dismay, the shoes are dangling from the power cable. A thunderstorm strikes late at night, and while everyone else is sleeping, Calvin wakes up Murph and Reg to collect the shoes from the cable. They step outside in the pouring rain. Calvin manages to scale a tree near the cable. He reaches for the shoes as lightning strikes them, knocking Calvin to the ground along with the shoes. Fortunately, he is not gravely injured. He realizes that the shoes are charged with an unusual force, but doesn't give it any thought. The children return to the arena the next day to sell candies. Calvin, Murph, and Reg each receive 4 tickets as promised by the coach. When Ox and his companions see them, they become envious. The bullies threaten to notify Biddleman that the tickets were purchased with charity funds. Calvin provides Ox one of the tickets to keep him from causing trouble. They then watch the game between the Knights and the Minnesota Timberwolves. During halftime, the team's star player, Tracy Reynolds, and one of the coaches do a halftime act designed to bring in more audience members. One audience member will be chosen to meet with Tracy one-on-one. To everyone's amazement, Calvin's ticket number is chosen for the contest. When Ox discovers this, he attempts to steal the ticket from his grasp. Calvin fools him and dashes to the front with his ticket. Tracy is unconcerned about the fight because Calvin is still a child. He allows him to score the first round so that the audience is more involved. But then he needs to stop the kid or he will be embarrassed. Tracy makes every effort but is unable to prevent Calvin from hitting a slam dunk. The stunned audience explodes in cheers, but the top player is left mortified. The next day, the Knights coaches go to see Biddleman and request that Calvin play for them for a day. The director is initially hesitant, but when money is offered, he decides to let him go. Calvin's buddies are ecstatic for him. Ox, on the other hand, is incensed. Calvin couldn't even beat Ox before he acquired the shoes, therefore the youngsters concluded that the shoes are magical. They decide to keep it a secret so that no one can take them away, but Ox overhears them talking. The next day, Calvin enters the Knights' locker room, much to Tracy's chagrin. Tracy's teammates warn him that the youngster is on his way to take his crown. Calvin is given a Knights jersey and a new pair of sneakers to wear. He begs the coach whether he can wear his old shoes, but the coach is unconcerned about his appearance. Calvin's attendance is merely a publicity gimmick, thus it makes no difference how he performs. Calvin's fame has grown significantly since the last match, which has boosted the attendance in the arena. He is unable to play in the first half of the game. He begs the coach to give him a chance since their team is going to lose. Despite his reservations, he lets Calvin play. Calvin is overly nervous because he isn't wearing his lucky shoes. To everyone's chagrin, he calls a timeout and dashes to the locker room to put on his old shoes. He is much more assured upon his return. The boy effectively assists his team in catching up to the opponent's points and winning. Following the match, he signs a contract to play for the rest of the tournament with the team. When Biddleman confronts him, he is in the orphanage packing to depart for the tournament. Because of the financial rewards, the man wishes to remain his guardian. As a result, he warns Calvin to be wary of those who want to adopt him right now, since they are simply interested in his money. Tracy and Calvin are assigned to the same room on the flight by the coach. Calvin is thrilled to be sharing a room with his idol, but Tracy is less thrilled. They have a curfew at night, which Tracy intends to violate. He prepares for a date and departs after showing Calvin how to use room service. The child has the freedom to eat anywhere he wants and takes full advantage of it. The room is strewn with half-eaten food when Calvin returns with his date. He had planned to spend the night with his date, but they end up taking care of Calvin, who is sick. Even when the boys go to bed late, Tracy has trouble sleeping due to Calvin's snoring. They have a big match the next day, but Tracy is exhausted. Calvin mistakenly tells the coach that they remained up late the night before. Tracy is warned that if he misses curfew one more time, he would be suspended. Calvin begins playing multiple games with the Knights that day and helps them win all of them. When opponents play with the child, they have no idea what to expect and are startled by his abilities. He gets to attend a lot of press conferences and earn a lot of money. He spends the money on gifts for everyone in the orphanage. He also wins the NBA Slam Dunk Contest, establishing himself as the most skilled rising basketball player. Calvin is telling Murph about his new life and how much fun he has had playing in the NBA one night. When a jealous ox hears them, he attacks Calvin, attempting to seize his shoes. When Biddleman intervenes and chastises Ox for punching his buddies, the brawl comes to an end. He doesn't want Calvin to be harmed, especially now that he makes so much money off of him. Tracy heads to the pharmacy the next time the team stays in a hotel to buy sleeping pills and allergy medications to guarantee he gets a decent night's sleep before the next day's match. Tracy is irritated when Calvin joins him for the ride. The child inquires about Tracy's parents as they travel. He discovered Tracy had a father with whom he does not communicate. Calvin finds the concept alien because he would do anything to have excellent parents. Tracy states he doesn't want to discuss his family and continues driving. He ignores the cashier's instructions and takes a sleeping tablet instead of an allergy medication. As a result, the man falls asleep before starting the car and returning to the hotel. Calvin realizes that if he misses the curfew, Tracy will be suspended, so he drives the car back to the hotel, crashing into various objects along the way. Calvin is suspended the next day for going on a joyride. Tracy is disappointed that the child was punished for his error. Later that night, on the trip back, Tracy praises Calvin for risking his life to save him. Tracy has grown fond of the child after spending some time with him. Several individuals come in to adopt Calvin as he returns to the orphanage. Murph is envious because he wants the adults to like him. Biddleman selects only the worst parents and schedules a meeting with them since he does not want Calvin to be adopted. Calvin dislikes any grown-ups he encounters and decides to remain in the orphanage. He goes to Tracy's residence uninvited that weekend. The size of the player's mansion captivates the child. Calvin informs Tracy that he is there because Murph is said he did not get good parents and he has a geometry test tomorrow. Tracy urges him to invite Murph over to help solve the kid's difficulties. While they wait, he entertains him by teaching him geometry in a fun way. They start throwing paint at each other in the middle of it. Murph eventually joins them and forgets about his disagreement with Calvin. Calvin and his buddies get together the next day and discuss how tough it is to find excellent parents. When Calvin informs them about Tracy and his father's connection, they assume he assisted in their reconciliation. Calvin meets Tracy's father the next day and brings him to Tracy's residence. Calvin had enraged the player for invading his privacy. They had a heated debate on the issue. The Knights play their biggest rivals, the Toronto Raptors, the next day, but Calvin and Tracy have yet to reconcile their disagreements. As a result, they lose the match. The coach chastises the team for underperforming in such an important game. They only have one more match to determine whether or not they will advance to the playoffs. The next day, a couple arrives at the orphanage and want to adopt Calvin. After numerous fruitless encounters, he is suspicious, but Biddleman persuades him to give them a try. Calvin is forced to wear new shoes, and he is told that if he looks nice, they would want to adopt him even more. Before leaving, Calvin delivers Murph his lucky shoes and asks him to protect them with his life. Murph wears the shoes and attempts to play like Calvin to put them to the test, but he fails. He concludes that they do not fit him and returns his attention to a photograph of his mother. Ox and his friends threaten him with revealing the shoes to them. When he refuses, they take him to Biddleman, who burns the only picture Murph has of his mother. With no other option, Murph informs them of the whereabouts of the sneakers. Following that, Biddleman gathers his friends and places a $100,000 wager against the Knights in the next game. He is confident that Calvin will perform poorly in the game since he has concealed the lucky shoes. Calvin attends a dinner with his prospective parents, but he does not appear to fit in. Meanwhile, Tracy visits his father and reconciles with him. He misses Calvin and calls him before their next battle. He wants to adopt the child, but is hesitant to inform him after meeting the couple he went to see yesterday. Murph phones Calvin 20 minutes before the game to alert him about the sneakers. Calvin races back to the orphanage to pick them up. The kids assist him in tying up Biddleman and inquire as to where the shoes are. Ox goes against the gang and attempts to assist him, but changes his mind after Biddleman criticizes him as usual. He retrieves the shoes from the safe and returns them to Calvin. Everyone then boards their motorbikes and returns to the arena. Biddleman manages to release himself and summons his associate to prevent Calvin from appearing to the game. The guys try to stop him, but the youngsters manage to hold them up long enough for Calvin to enter the arena. Biddleman, as a last resort, steps in front of Calvin, preventing him from continuing, but the child smashes him with his scooter and eventually gets to the game. His squad has fallen far behind by the time he arrives. When he begins to play, they quickly catch up to the opponent's score. However, in the middle of the game, he is tackled and his shoes are destroyed. Calvin, who is apprehensive, believes that his magic is in the shoes and that he would never be able to score without them. Tracy inspires the child by reminding him that the shoes simply gave him confidence and that his true skill lies within himself. Calvin eventually returns to the game and assists his team in winning. Calvin tells his coach that he does not want to renew his contract because he wants to spend the rest of his childhood like any other youngster. He returns to the orphanage, which has changed dramatically since Biddleman's departure. Tracy informs Calvin of his aspirations to adopt a child and asks if he would like to be his son. Calvin agrees on the condition that Murph accompany him. Reg, their pal, has also been adopted by a different family. Finally, in their new room, Calvin and Murph have a fun battle with Tracy. That was the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it. Subscribe for more material like this, and please press the like button to assist us. Also, if you want us to recap your favorite movie, leave a comment. Take care until the next time.